Thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
What's up, Texas? How's everybody doing? As always, going to start off the show by making sure everyone can hear me and everyone can see me. A very dry Tuesday. So if you hear me cough, if you hear a little bit of roughness in my throat, just know that here in North Texas, we've been dealing with like 20% or less humidity for the past few days. So yeah, that's been a little bit rough on your girls' sinuses, vocal cords, and everything. But how's everybody doing? Speaking of things being a little bit dry, when it comes to the Cowboys news out there, like this feels like a very quiet, very slow time compared to what we're used to. I feel like we're used to this time of year The combine starts. There's some meeting that's held on Jerry Jones's bus, and then we get a soundbite that has everybody talking for the weeks and months to come. And this time, not so much. We've got a little bit of news, a few pieces of information from Stephen Jones, but nothing that really has the Twitter streets buzzing. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of here for it. I know there are some people who are very frustrated by the lack of drama, the lack of tea being spilled. But as a person who just wants to see the team get their shit together personnel wise, figure out what they're doing in terms of the defensive staff, and do way better in 2026 than they did in 2025 and 2024, I'm like, if that means keeping it quiet, keeping it short and sweet, then by all means, let's make that happen. But if you're watching and you have any opinions on that you want to throw in the chat, feel free, and I'd be happy to respond to your questions or concerns, or just give my opinion in response to yours. But we have a little bit of a different topic to discuss today. I know a lot of people are used to hearing me discuss Dallas Cowboys news and Dallas Wings news. But if you've been watching during the Winter Olympics, you know a lot of those headlines have caught my attention. And even though the Winter Olympics are over and done with, today is another one of those days where Winter Olympics related headlines still have my attention. As you can tell from the thumbnail, we have to talk about the men's U.S. hockey team and what happened with that phone call with Donald Trump. I know it's been controversial. People have some varying opinions on it. There are some people who are like, yeah, they didn't handle that well. They were kind of wrong for what they did. And then there are some people who are like, yeah, people are making a mountain out of a molehill. It wasn't that big of a deal. So we'll dive into it and talk about it. But first, we want to get through some shout outs and call outs. So with the shout outs and call outs, we're going to start off. Actually, I'm going to start off with a shout out to Stephen Jones for keeping it short and sweet when it comes to the George Pickens discussion and the discussions about defensive personnel. Because although all he did was tell the truth. All he did was basically keep it honest about where the organization is, where the front office is in terms of what they want to do and how they want to handle these contracts, and the truth about the contracts that pretty much anybody who's been paying attention can see. Anybody who's been paying attention knows that, yeah, there are going to have to be some moves made when it comes to the contract, how the contracts of various players and how that money is divvied up in order to get the Cowboys under the salary cap. But what I like about what Stephen Jones had to say was the fact that there were no controversial comments about the pie, the proverbial pie that they bring up every year. There were no disparaging comments about the players whose contracts may need to be restructured or negotiated. He just kept it honest. Yes, there are some players, we're going to need their cap room. Yes, we are considering putting a franchise tag on George Pickens, and that was pretty much it. So I love it. If that's going to lead to a more functional organization, then by all means, keep that up. But I do want to make sure that y'all know one piece of news that I saw just before we got on air here. Apparently, there's been another addition to the Cowboys coaching staff. Well, if you want to call him a coach. BT Jordan has been hired as a pass rush specialist consultant. So that sounds like not quite a coach, but somebody who's going to be connected with and speaking to the coaches. So to the Cowboys staff, welcome BT Jordan. So that's the news for the day. Now, moving on with the shout-outs and call-outs. Before we get into the drama of what's going on with Team USA, I do want to make sure and shout out Team USA for setting a national record with 12 gold medals at the Winter Olympics. So it looks like the final count has... Did I close the final count? No, I got it right here. So Norway got the most gold medals, which is typical for them. They got gold medals, 41 medals total. The then Germany, and then rounding out the top 5. Team USA for the new record, and shout out to all those countries for doing so well at the Winter Olympics. I I also want to give a quick shout out to the Premier League teams that are keeping this championship race so interesting and engaging. So if you've been watching, you know that I've kind of had my eye on the Premier League. I've been trying to learn more about the game of soccer, and that has led me to watching a lot of the Premier League matchups. I still don't have a favorite team. I do not have a favorite team, but I do have some favorite players. Y'all know I love some good storylines. Y'all know I cannot help myself whenever I see a good player who gets me interested in their play style or in their backstory or just in their swag in general. Like Liverpool's Ekitike really reminds me a lot of CeeDee Lamb in terms of swag and what they bring to the sport in terms of their persona. So just stuff like that gets me interested. But don't get it twisted. I don't have a favorite team yet. However, last week, I did talk about possibly doing some Premier League watch-alongs, and I think I might do that this weekend. So make sure you keep your notifications turned on. But yeah, as far as the Premier League teams at the top, first of all, Manchester United fans should be feeling really good right now. Especially considering the fact that when I started watching, like, kind of in the middle of the season, Manchester United fans were kind of pissed off, and for good reasons. Not just because the team was underperforming compared to what fans were used to, but the more I dug into it, the more that I saw the organization just did not seem to have any actual direction. And I feel like that would piss off most fans more than the team just not doing well. But Michael Carrick has y'all looking right. And not only that, but I gotta point out, he kind of looks like he could play the protagonist in like some kind of to-be British spy movie. Like, y'all ever notice that? But outside of that, he has Manchester United back in the top four, so that's an interesting storyline. Could even become more interesting as the season going, because I think they're only a few points behind the top spot. Let me see if I have these standings. Yeah, Manchester United is at 48 points total. And Arsenal is at the top with 61. So in theory, there's a version of reality where, Manchester United could are competing with Man City and Arsenal for that top spot, the way that Michael Carrick has things looking. So I heard Manchester United was still looking at other potential head coaching candidates. And I'm not sure why, because worst case scenario, if you keep Michael Carrick and he doesn't do well, it's like, oh, well, he was doing well, so we gave him a chance. It didn't work out well. But if you let this man go, you bring somebody else in, then what you don't want to happen is Michael Carrick goes to another team, and that team ends up doing better than what you do. Worse, Michael Carrick goes to a team that Manchester United ends up face season and kicks y'all's ass, So I just feel like if I was one of the decision makers at Manchester United, I would much rather see Michael Carrick not do well than face either of those other two possibilities. So it's just like, if y'all do plan on switching away from Carrick, you better be sure. You better be sure, because these fans will fucking riot if you let him go and then the team goes back to being trash. What else we got in Premier League? We got Man City keeping it interesting with Arsenal at the top. They're winning their games. Arsenal winning 4-1 over Tottenham. Other shout out that I need to give out. I need to shout out the Arsenal fans in the DFW area. So let me tell y'all how this went down this weekend. I saw that Cosm was doing a showing of the Arsenal versus Tottenham game. And Cosm is one of the best places to watch sports. It's like an immersive experience, huge screens, great food. I love it there. What's up, JV? Good to see you in the chat. And so I saw that Cosm was showing the Arsenal game. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to roll through, see what the vibe is like, because this game was at like 10:30 on a Sunday. So I'm like, who in Texas loves Arsenal so much that they're going to Cosm to watch this game at a time when most people are getting ready for church or they're chilling at home? So I was just really curious what the vibe is going to be like. So I get there. There's some people in there, not packed, but there were people in there. I'm like, okay, this is a good vibe. But then I realized, I'm like, wait. There's way more black people in here than I thought there would be. Like, I wasn't expecting that, right? So I'm like, okay, interesting. And afterwards, I hit up the homie John, and I'm like, John, there was way more black people there than I thought there would be. That's not what I led with. We were talking about, that came up. And John, who does not watch sports, who's not into sports, who doesn't know anything about sports, much less the Premier League, he's like, somehow I knew that. I feel like I know some black people who are Arsenal fans. Somehow I knew that there were a lot of black Arsenal fans. I'm like, are you serious? So I started doing my little search thing. I'm researching to see, like, what's up with this? Like, is it a Dallas thing? Is it an American thing? Like what's up? And so Chijioke Nwonka. I hope I'm saying that. I think it's Dr. Clive Chijioke Nwonka. And I wasn't sure what to expect when I started listening to this book on Audible. But what I found most interesting so far is the fact that going into my soccer journey with no intention whatsoever of like diving into the racial aspects of it or anything like that wasn't what I was looking to find. Just following my natural curiosity about the sport, following the story of the sport, the fans of the sport, and myself reading about racism. And the author of this book he starts off talking about how racism back in the 60s has played a role in the formation of the culture around Arsenal and its fan base. But he also mentions that it's a particular brand of racism that came from number one in everything, the USA. And I say number one in everything sarcastically because, if you've been paying attention, you know that that's been part of the narrative that America has created about itself for the longest time. That is number one in everything. But it does seem to be number one when it came to this. This is not the first book I've read where they've been like, oh yeah, the way that these particular racial narratives were dispensed among the population, the way that this particular brand of racism took place or took shape. Yeah, that started in America. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is, one, something that I'm going to bring up in the future because I just find it fascinating that there's this whole subculture of Black Arsenal fans. And I'm really enjoying my foray into the world of soccer. I was telling my friends about this earlier today, and one of them, Stacy, who I think might still be in the chat, Stacy was like, oh, it sounds like you found a new hyperfixation. Congratulations. And I hadn't thought about it that way, but I totally have. And for an ADHD person like me, yeah, that is cause for congratulations. But yeah, so I am going to dive deeper into this, and this will come up again, but I'm also bringing it up. The way that race seems to play a role in soccer, whether people want it to or not, kind of reminds me of how sexism also tends to play a role in sports in general, whether people want it to or not. I'll never forget probably my second year hosting this podcast, and at the time, Bitches Love Sports was heavy, way heavier than I am now. And one of the things they said was they were like, yeah, the only thing that we would ask is that you not be too political. And I was like, it's really difficult to talk about women's sports and the accomplishments of women in sports and the history of women in sports without getting political. They're like intertwined. Like that's not a thing. I wanted to be like, have you watched my content? What? That is a ridiculous request, sir. And so, yeah, those conversations. But that conversation does bring me to my last call out, which brings me to segment. And Tiffany, I don't see the clock, so you're going to have to keep me on task here when it comes to time. But yeah, the main topic for this first segment that is related to this call out is the U.S. men's hockey team and the backlash over their phone call with Donald Trump. So if you're not privy to what happened, essentially both the U.S. men's and women's hockey teams won their gold medal games in practically identical fashion. They both competed against Canada. They both competed in games that went into overtime, and they both ended up winning in overtime by a score of 2-1. So these were practically identical games, right? And so after the women's game, people were so excited. Then after the men's game, it just felt like there was a swell of patriotism that almost felt too good to be true. And of course it was, because we couldn't even have a day of a lack of controversy for people to just enjoy this and be like, USA, USA in unison for a fucking day before it was ruined by controversy and misogyny and sex quick, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because while I love the people in my audience, y'all might have a different opinion than I do. Y'all might have different thoughts than I do. So before I continue, I'm going to play the video that went viral and that led to this conversation about the men's U.S. hockey team and whether or not they were being disrespectful and dismissive of the women's U.S. hockey team.
minute. 1 minute. And by the way, your goalie played not bad.
Howie, say hi. Howie, say hi to him.
How you doing, Don?
I have seen hockey goalies have slightly worse games than him. Unbelievable, and you were all unbelievable. And that team is pretty good you played. I don't know if it's going to begin anytime soon, right? And, you know, I tell you what, I just told my people 2 minutes ago, they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union, send a military plane or something. But if you would like to, it's the coolest night, it's the biggest.
We're in.
Speech.
Can you pick us up in Miami on Tuesday morning?
Yeah, Tuesday morning. Close the northern border.
We'll get cash and we'll get the military to get you guys over.
Okay, let's go. Boys are going to the State of the Union.
The nice thing about being president is I can tell you, you don't have to worry about the weather or landing. So we don't care if it's snowing, if it's the worst blizzard, you'll be sailing through that city just like you did at the ice track.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Now we'll do it at the White House anytime. What would really be cool, and we'll do the White House the next day, we'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. Absolutely. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay? But anyway, if you could work that out, I would be honored to have you. I'll introduce you to the whole...
I got it, boss. I got it.
So we'll pause it there. So that is FBI Director Kash Patel holding a phone for the men's U.S. hockey team to talk to President Donald Trump. And the controversial comment that got a lot of attention was when Donald Trump said, of course, I have to invite the women. He just has. And the entire team laughed at that supposed joke. And then Trump goes on to say, you know, I'm basically reducing the gold medal winning women's U.S. hockey team to a political burden. And there was some controversy about why that was. They were like, okay, is it because he just has an issue with women who accomplish something? Which, I mean, sounds crazy until you consider some of the things that the president has said to women who were just doing their jobs and had the audacity to ask him like a relevant question. And some of the names they've been called and the comments that have been made about their supposed intelligence, their appearance, or their qualification to even do what they do. And then there was the headline about the women's gold medal game being, and I quote, unprecedentedly gay. Consisted of a total of 9 representatives of the LGBTQ plus community, and that got some attention from some people, some positive and some negative. And so there were people wondering if that was the issue and of the women who were involved in hockey, that he just wasn't looking for their presence, that there may be a little bit of political tension in terms of the policies that he's enacted and what the women are interested in. Hold on, I'm looking. And so basically, this particular clip was brought to my attention when someone pointed out that, hey, it's kind of weird that, you know, this is the party that Donald Trump represents, the party that always talks about protecting women, yet seems to also see women as some sort of joke, as some sort of burden, as some sort of political obligation that he just has to have around but doesn't really want to. How can we trust people to protect women when they also view women as a joke? And so that's where I started off, like, looking at this story from the perspective of just the oddness of, you know, simultaneously saying that you respect women and you want them to represent the country in this way and you're proud of them for winning a gold medal, but yet at the same time you make them the punchline of a joke. Like, I'm trying to reconcile that in my head. And what bothered me was not only the fact that these men were laughing, but it was also thinking about the fact that there are so many women who support this campaign for protecting women, quote unquote, and protecting women's sports, who also go along with this particular narrative that is perpetuated by the same men who are making them a punchline. In other words, to simplify this, you've got women allowing their definition of who a woman is, who they should accept or reject as a woman, and exactly what that narrative should be around women. And you've got women accepting that narrative, not from people who actually seem serious about protecting women, not from people who actually seem to respect women, but they're accepting that narrative. They're accepting that directive or those directives from people who laugh at women, from people who, even when it comes to women as accomplished as the U.S. women's hockey team, will turn those women into a joke, will reduce those women into a punchline, will reduce those women into a political burden, something that they have to put up with for the sake of meeting someone else's definition of quote unquote fairness, so that they don't have to deal with the backlash in President Trump's case of potentially being impeached, which obviously that he means that as a joke, but potentially being impeached because, of not including the women that he really doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with. So that was my first response, of just the irony of that, of just how ridiculous that entire, just painting that picture and just looking at how ridiculous it is in its entirety. But then I saw the response from some of the guys who were involved. So it was, hold on, I'm trying to make sure that I get their names right. And I apologize. This is another one of those days where I have my notes all over the place. Oh, goodness. Hold on, I'm going to read y'all's comments while I was looking at this. JV said, I just want to verify that the POTUS spoke to the U.S. Olympic team through a phone held by an agent instead of to date means like a large screen and camera. I'm going to be honest, JV, that part really didn't bother me. I don't know who called who or how Trump ended up on the phone. That part didn't really bother me. Maybe it wasn't planned. Maybe it was impromptu, and that's how that ended up happening. Because if you've seen the footage, before that happened, Patel was just in there dancing and laughing and ha-ha and kikiing. So, I mean, as long as it was a secure line, like, it kind of is what it is. All right, so it was Jack and Quinn Hughes who were the ones who put out statements in response to what everybody's been saying about the men's hockey situation. And we might bring this over into the second segment because it looks like we're going to run into the break. I'm going to do a little bit of read and react before we get out of here and into the break. And so this is what was published on ESPN. It says, U.S. Olympic hockey player Jack Hughes called his team's relationship with the U.S. women's team as quote-unquote tight, pushing back on the backlash over into President Donald Trump's comments about the women's Olympic hockey team. He said, our relationship with them over the course of being in the Olympic Village, I think we were so tight with their group. After we won the gold medal, we were in the cafeteria at 3:30 a.m. in the morning with them. We go from there, pack our bags, we're on the bus. He goes on. He says, people are so negative about things. I think supporting that locker room shows how much we support them, how proud we are of them. The same way we feel about them, they feel about us. People are so negative about things, is what he said. And as I was reading this, I was just kind of like, what do you mean people are so negative? And so I was like, let me continue, because maybe he says something to make that statement sound a little bit less dismissive of people who are concerned about the tone of that conversation they were having. So he goes on and says, everyone is giving its backlash for all the social media stuff today. People are so negative out there, and they are just trying to find a reason. They're just trying to find a reason to put people down and make something out of almost nothing, Jack Hughes said in response to a question by the Daily Mail at a team celebration event outside of 11 Miami on Monday. So he says, people are so negative out there, and they're trying to make something out of nothing. And to that, I'm going to just say this. If you feel like this is nothing, then you are speaking from a place of privilege, period. Because this isn't nothing. This is a man who has enacted policies that, or is trying to enact policies that have the potential to affect what women can do, their ability to vote, the rights they have, and not just women. We're talking about LGBTQ plus people in general, because like I said, we don't know if the laughter was about the makeup of the team or just that they're women. So it's not nothing. We're talking about people who are actually concerned about human rights, civil rights and the direction that this country is going in. So when they see you laughing and ha-haing and kikiing about the women's team, they don't see this as just a locker room joke. They see the men's hockey team laughing and kikiing with somebody who just a few months ago was talking about rolling back Title IX. You know what I'm saying? And so I just feel like when you say things like that, you don't understand the actual gravity of your words. And then he goes on to say, they talk about being sincerely grateful for the invitation to the State of the Union. And then Jack says, everything is so political. We're athletes. We're so proud to represent the U.S. When you get the chance to go to the White House and meet the president, we're proud to be Americans, and that's so patriotic. I only have a few seconds to the break here, but I'm going to give y'all a preview for segment 2. It's not that people are making things political, it's that it is political. Like I said earlier, you literally cannot dive into the history of sports without hitting something involved in racism or sexism. And especially when we're talking about women's sports, we're talking about a situation where they weren't even allowed to play hockey. So in segment 2, we're going to dive deeper into that and why people are so upset about Jack Hughes' comments. Stick with me and we'll be right back after the break.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Hey travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
And we are back. All right, so at the end of segment 1, we started talking about the men's hockey team, the video that went viral that led to the backlash and the controversy. And we talked about Jack Hughes' quote about essentially his response to the backlash, him saying everything is so political. We're athletes. We're so proud to represent the U.S. And I was getting into why that's, I hate to call it an asinine comment, but it is. It is. So here's the thing, y'all. And I feel like I just talked about this. I feel like every topic related to this is something that I just talked about. Last week, we just talked about the fact that there are young women who are excluding themselves from the path to greatness in terms of joining women's sports because of their concern over their image and just the way people seem to respond to women's image, how they look, make fun of them, talk about them, and how that's literally discouraging women and girls from being involved in sports. Not long before that, we talked about the fact that whether it's Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics, we talked about the fact that there was a long road to inclusion for women because of myths about fragility, myths about what would happen to women's bodies, and if it even medically made sense for them to be athletic. The fact that there were laws against women in such a way that it made it hard for them to even appropriately for the gym, and how women's gyms and a lot of the myths about women's athleticism didn't even allow them to be trained properly to become good athletes and to get their sports to the point where they would make great addition to the Olympics. And so when we talk about women's hockey specifically, that's a sport that was not even included in the Olympics until 1998. 1998. And so when people say things like this, like everything is so political, as though things like this should be dismissed as a joke or as a non-issue, I'm like, what do you mean everything's like, why are you making light of that comment as though it's not true? Why are you trying to gaslight people into not believing that women's sports is political? It's very much political. Like, it literally took political movements for women to have the right to play sports, for women to have equal access in terms of the resources, in terms of facilities, in terms of training, in terms of support and funding. Every women's accomplishment in sports, in athleticism, in the Olympics, and any sport that you can think of is directly tied to some sort of political movement. So yes, this is political. When you see the men's team essentially doing the same thing that the women's team just did, but laughing at it, acting like, oh, it would be a joke for them to be included. Like, yeah, you are essentially making a political statement. And for you to turn around and act like people should dismiss that, for people to suggest that people should deny that, to me, I say the people who say to keep politics out of sports are people who are comfortable with keeping their head in the sand. Because if you want to keep politics out of sports, you would have to keep it out of everything. Politics is just as much a part of sports as it is any part of our daily life. The same way that, like, sometimes I have to talk to, like, when I'm talking to my grandpa, for example, who's in his 90s, about, you know, the fact that I have certain freedoms that he didn't have when he was my age, is the same way that certain women who were playing hockey in the early 90s end up talking to modern day hockey players about the fact that they didn't have certain access, certain rights, and certain freedoms and certain privileges, you know? So it is 100% political. And so for the people who don't think that this should be political, I have a few questions. First of all, funny. Like, that's my first question. What the fuck was so funny? Because for those who are saying it was just a joke, get over it, like, really didn't hear the joke. So we can even start there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm one of the people who just doesn't get it. So, like, if you're watching this after the fact, or if you're in the chat, like, please enlighten us as to what was so funny. As a matter of fact, Jack Hughes, that would have been my question. While people are asking him what his response is, and he's like, oh, everything is so political, you know? Everybody's so negative. Okay, well, if everybody's so negative, enlighten us. What the fuck was so funny? Like, please help me understand how inviting the women's team to the White House, just like you're being invited, is somehow a joke, is somehow a punchline, is somehow funny. Because I feel like that's problem number one. People aren't seeing the joke. So no matter how many times you try to say it's just a joke, nobody's explained it. And so it doesn't sound like it was actually a joke. It sounds like that's your way of saying, I'm uncomfortable with being held accountable for my actions. I'm uncomfortable with being held accountable for my reaction, my response, or lack thereof to the president making fun of women I claim to care about, of women I claim to respect. And I don't want to talk about it. So I'm going to say that y'all are overreacting. It's the PR version of gaslighting is what it is. So that's the first thing. And then another thing that I would say is, for the people who feel like politics should be kept separate from sports, how do you discuss the history of sports without discussing politics? How do you suggest we explain why this was the first team that even had a Black woman hockey player on it without discussing the limitations that Black people have had in terms of access to certain sports and access to certain spaces? How do you explain the fact that the first women's hockey tournament in the Olympics didn't happen to 1998 without talking about politics, without talking about the history of women in sports? How do you explain that big delay, that big gap in time between the introduction and the formation of certain men's sports leagues and the corresponding women's leagues? Like, how do you explain how women's gymnastics, women's basketball, women's soccer, how all of those sports are so far behind in terms of support, development, resources, and everything else without discussing politics, without talking about the truth of how so many things were kept from women professionally, socially, legally, not to mention athletically? How in the world do you discuss sports and the history of sports and explain why we are where we are? And why certain milestones are just now being passed by women without talking about the political history of this country? And so that's why I say the people who say keep politics out of sports. We don't need to get political. It's not that big a deal. We don't really, it was just a joke. You motherfuckers just want to keep your head in the sand. That's all this is, because there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no real logic to it. There's no real support for this idea that politics shouldn't be part of sports when every single major milestone in sports history is connected to some sort of political event or political movement or the withholding or addition of someone's civil and human rights. That's just true. It's like we literally cannot talk about the accomplishments of the women's hockey team without at some point talking about the fight that women have had to put up in order to be able to play sports in the first place. So going back to the comment that I made in the first segment before I wrapped this up and wrap up my response, you cannot sit there and laugh and kiki with Kash Patel and with Donald Trump and not have certain people look at that and say, yeah, you're laughing and kikiing with the people who want to roll back Title IX. You're laughing and kikiing with people who want to take away women's voting rights. You're laughing and kikiing with people who feel like they have the right to dictate how women should look, dress, think, and behave. It's not just random locker room talk. It is support for the idea that women should be controlled by men in power. Because that's the thing about it. When y'all talk about protecting women, but you don't respect women, protection without respect is control. That's what it is. Protection without respect is not protection, it is control. So, like, even in modern day Olympics, we cannot say keep politics out of sports when there are actual athletes who are not allowed to compete because of their hormone levels. Because governing bodies cannot get together and decide what they feel like they're comfortable saying a woman is. And because they want to define what a woman is, there are actual athletes who are fucking good at what they do who are not allowed to compete because they don't fit what certain politicians think a woman is supposed to look like or how big they're supposed to be. Like, are you fucking serious? But then you want the right to laugh and kiki and ha-ha about it and don't have nobody hold you accountable. Don't have nobody talk about the fact that you're supporting and encouraging the people who are putting those restrictions on women in place. And for the women who support those restrictions, I want you to think long and hard about what it is that you're supporting, because I get it. I get that some people are like, well, we don't want men in sports. I don't want men in women's sports necessarily either. But I will say this. There are ways to figure out how to improve your sport without denigrating other women and without placing these strong restrictions on what it means to be a woman. And here's what I mean by that. We might not even get to as it is in sports, so it is in life today, because I need to finish it. So I need to get it out. I didn't do my show notes in this, and the more I talk, the more I'm like, I need to go into this, because here's what this conversation about women in sports reminds me of a little bit, right? So y'all know I played roller derby for some years. And in roller derby, a lot of games are open gender. That means I've played with and against men, non-binary people, trans people, of course, cisgender women. I've played with and against everybody, almost damn near any classification you can think of, right? And I'm going to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to come back. Now, I want y'all to think about what Bad Bunny said recently. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the best way to combat hate is through love. And I'm going to say this, by turning this into a conversation when it comes to protecting women in sports, by turning it into a conversation about which women you hate and the type of women you hate, you are literally denying yourself the opportunity to express a love for your sport by improving it. And here's what I mean by that. in roller derby, there was a conversation about trans women in sports because there were some women who didn't like playing against trans women because they said they played too much like men, right? And so there ended up being this big conversation about whether or not that was true and whether playing with and against men was a bad thing and this and that. But my thing was this. First of all, as someone who skated with and against a lot of trans women, I don't know what you would consider a lot. More than most. There's a lot of women who ain't never even met a trans woman in their life, first of all. So when I say a lot, I just mean more than most. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't have an actual count, but I'm pretty sure I've skated with and against more trans women than a lot of people have actually met in their real fucking life, okay? So, but by a lot, I mean I've skated against trans women who were smaller than some of the cisgender dudes that I know. And I've skated against some that were bigger. So when you say trans women skate like men, it just sounded very general to me. As a matter of fact, and these names might not mean shit to most of y'all, but if you watch roller derby or if you play roller derby and watching this, you know the names I'm about to mention. Probably two of the skaters I was most afraid of were Peace War and Freight Train. Two cisgender women who would put you on your ass. So the people I was most afraid of were not the fucking trans women and how hard they would hit me and how tall they were. It was actually cisgender women who were the ones I had the hardest time against. So when I'm listening to people complain about competing against trans women, I'm like, is it that trans women are a problem? Or is it that your league needs to have a weekend clinic so you can learn how to hit better or take hits better or block better? And I feel like if instead of focusing on how trans women skate, you actually look at what the shortcomings are in terms of your personal gameplay and your sport, we can actually come to some sort of common ground that actually makes sense. Because are there some sports that could benefit from maybe a weight class system? Yes, there are. Are there certain sports that could benefit from maybe a height class system? Maybe. So we don't have to attack all trans women because we're afraid of their height and weight when there are literally systems you can put in place that account for height and weight, you know? And it's that if it's something like in the case of roller derby where you don't like the fact that they hit so hard, first of fucking all, there's no rules against hitting hard. It's a contact sport. You're supposed to hit hard. You're supposed to take pride in that shit. And if for some reason you have a problem with hitting hard and being hit hard, that is a personal problem. That's I need my league to get together and figure out how we can get better at this problem. That's not a trans women problem. It's like y'all should have women in your league who are fucking hitting hard, regardless of what the fuck is in their pants, regardless of their hormonal makeup. Like, you shouldn't even be proud to go on Facebook and say no shit like that if we being real. Like, you should be a fucking shame yourself. I don't want to compete against people who are better than me. It's essentially what you're saying. So anyway, I digress. We got on this topic by talking about the fact that some of the same people who talk about wanting to protect women and who act like protecting women in sports is at the forefront of their mind, they will turn around and turn women into a joke and turn women into a punchline and then try to act like, oh, everybody's so political. Everybody's so negative. No, sir. Like, that perspective is speaking from a place of privilege. If you are a person who can go through most of your life not worried about the potential for policies, procedures, rules, and legislation to be put in place that will impact you, who you are, and the people that you love and care about, then that's privilege. Because that's what the rest of us are dealing with. Like, the rest of us are dealing with a motherfucker that y'all going to see tonight because the State of the Union is, y'all are so proud to go to the State of the Union. Y'all are so proud to go to the White House, which I'm not even mad at that. Regardless of how you feel about dude, that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So even if you just want to go and see what's up and you're like, I don't really fuck with what they stand for, but it's the State of the Union. When am I going to have a chance to do that again? Do that. Do your thing. But let's not act like this isn't the same person that has made statements about who is and isn't from a shithole country and who deserves what rights and who deserves to be treated like a human being like everybody else and who should have certain rights and what should be taken away. So yes, you laughing and kikiing with him on the phone and making a joke about the women's team is 100% political, and yes, it is negative. Don't get up here and try to gaslight motherfuckers into thinking that it's nothing, into thinking that it's a fucking joke. Until you ready to get on social media and explain the fucking joke, like, yes, people have a reason to come for you. Jack Hughes, Quinn Hughes, and I'm about to say your mama, but I need to explain. It's not like an insult. Their mom literally came to their defense, okay? So their mother is a player development consultant for the women's hockey team. So some outlets have had her on TV defending her son. So when I say y'all and y'all mama, I'm not saying that to be rude, y'all. I literally mean them and their like actual mom and her job and like what she does. So like until back to what I was saying, until you're ready to come on social media or on somebody's platform and explain the fucking joke, everybody has a right to come for you and your mama. That's just it. Boom. Anyway, I see we got a Canadian viewer in the chat, and today's As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life actually concerns Team Canada. So I want to read this comment before I get into that. I can't see the name. It says Last Shadow? I'm sorry, I can't see from here. I need a new eye exam. But it says, Canadian here. I watch every Canada versus USA game. Best hockey games. Everyone's proud of the U.S. men's and women's hockey team this year. If we, Canada, ain't going to win, then I want the U.S. to take it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then producer Tiff decided to chime in and said, disappointed to hear that from the Hughes brothers, but they're young. I wonder what their mom thought of that statement, being that she played for the women's U.S. team back in the 90s. Well, Tiff, if you go to YouTube and you type in her name and USA Today, she was on USA Today this morning actually defending it and saying that people are being too divisive and that they need to focus on unity and being proud of the U.S. Did not address the concerning aspects of the interaction. And here's my thing, before I get into As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life, if we get to it. Here's my thing. Tiffany's right. They are young. I think Jack is 24 and Quinn is 26. They are young. And so in a way, this does feel like a typical response from a young cisgender man who has not had to confront the realities of some of the things that the current administration face. Because unless they've had some real deep talks with their mom or some of the women in their life, I don't even know how many women they have in their life to have this discussion, they might be ignorant to it. Because that's the thing about this administration. It's been very easy. Like, if you are a cisgender white heterosexual Christian male, there's not a lot that's really been done against you. There's not a lot for you to be concerned about unless you just have a general concern for your fellow citizens. A genuine concern for your fellow citizens. You know what I'm saying? So yes, they are young. But my thing is this. I'm not even saying that they have to necessarily apologize. But even had they come out and instead of saying everybody's so negative, everybody's so political, had they just come out and said, you know what? That wasn't the best response. We really need to work on our response when people make jokes that we're not comfortable with. We really need to work on how we handle this situation when people think it's okay to turn the women's team into a punchline. Even if they said, you know what, it was awkward. I didn't know what to do in that situation. That was the president of the United States. And so I just laughed along. And in hindsight, I wish I had blank. Or I just want to say blank. To the people who were hurt by that reaction, I just want to say blank. Just something to let people know that you understand that that shit wasn't cool. Like, that would be appreciated by so many people. But when you turn around and take the opportunity to actually address it in a genuine way, in a way that shows empathy, care, concern, in a way that shows understanding of why the women turned down that invitation. Because, like, let's talk about that. Like, the president says, oh, we got to invite the women. And the women are like, we're not going. And, of course, they cited logistical conflicts and yada, yada, yada. But you mean to tell me not a single one of them? No, the whole team in solidarity said they're not going. And I've been Googling it. I've been looking for it. As far as I can tell, not a single one of those women has even come to the defense of those guys or what they did. So while they out here swearing it's just a joke and they care so much about the women's team, ain't none of the women co-signing that. I haven't heard any of them say, oh, it was just a joke. We're not tripping. They haven't said anything in defense of the Hughes brothers. They're not going to the State of the Union tonight. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, they got something planned with Flava Flav. Flava Flav came through. If y'all don't know, Flava Flav is one of the sponsors of the women's water polo team. A huge proponent of women's sports. So, like, if you've been seeing him on some of these commercials, that's why. And so let me pull this up real quick. Because this is basically something that unfolds. I might have it up on my phone. Team out to Vegas. And the date was, so I don't know if it's tonight, but let's see if I can pull up the post. So Flava Flav said, if the U.S. women's hockey team wants a real celebration, I'll host them in Las Vegas. Some nice dinners and shows and good times. I'm sure I can get a hotel and airline to help me out here and celebrate these women for real, for real. And then, of course, followed it up with a gif of himself. And so he put that out on X. And then apparently Delta, who is the sponsor for the U.S. Olympic team, they reached out to help him arrange it. They made Flava Flav said that who are performing in Vegas right now are apparently his boys, quote unquote. So apparently StubHub chimed in and are going to get them some tickets to help them see the Backstreet Boys. Let's see what else. There was mention on social media of the women's team being presented with some gold medal clocks. So I don't know when all this is going down, but Flava Flav came to the women's team and provide a celebration and a homecoming that they'd actually be comfortable attending. Because like I said, the team is made up of all women, some of them who are queer. I can see why they might not really want to go to a State of the Union where, from what I understand, a lot of Democrats and progressives have been disinvited. Like, who the fuck does that? It's like I told y'all that one time when I was like, it's always be there, but it's a sentiment that's felt across races and across demographics. I feel like there's a lot of women on that team who when they thought, who all gonna be there? They were just like, nah, not feeling it. Not feeling it. So Tiff chimes in, we're not going to do As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life. Y'all just going to have to keep your notifications on. And on Friday, I will follow up with the As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life that I had planned for the day, which actually involves how to deal with basically silver medal syndrome, being in second place and not knowing if you should feel grateful and satisfied or if you have a right to be like, nah, this ain't good enough. So check me out on Friday and we'll talk more about that. But I do want to get to this one more comment from Tiffany, who says, being young isn't an excuse either. The entire team had the bro thing going with Trump, which is the major problem. The administration is trying to take women's rights to vote away and so much more. I'm proud of the women's team for turning it down. And then there's more to this. Let's see. I'm not going to say that out loud because I still don't know what YouTube is going to censor. So we'll leave that in the chat. And if anybody wants to see how Tiff concluded that, you can go to the chat. But agreed and agreed. And which is another reason why they maybe shouldn't be ha-haing and kikiing with this man. It is political. It's political, it's negative, and for the women who were feeling a sense of pride when watching the women's hockey team, it's hurtful. You know, it's hurtful. JV says, yes, I am also a huge supporter of women's sports. Thank you, JV. And I know you are, because even whenever I shift away from Cowboys and start my Wings content, I always see you in the chat and I always see you in the comments and liking the posts. So I appreciate you, JV, for being a supporter of women's sports. But anyway, we don't have enough time to do As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life today. We also don't have enough time to get into the WNBA CBA negotiation updates that I was going to give you guys. Just know that there has been progress, but not quite enough. March 10th is a date that the WNBA and the WNBPA are looking at to try to wrap things up. But let's just say the WNBPA, the players right now, feel like they've been backed into a corner by the WNBA. They feel like the WNBA has manipulated timelines in order to get them to accept terms that they're not really happy with. So you might hear talk about March 10th being a date, but just know that there's still some drama amidst those negotiations that we will talk more about on Friday, and any developments between now and then we'll also address on Friday. So keep those notifications on. And on Friday, we'll talk about the WNBA. We'll talk about As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life. I know that's become a popular segment among most of y'all. And if there's any further developments with the men's hockey team, we'll talk about that too. And then, of course, any Cowboys news coming combine. We will definitely have that to discuss. Friday should be a fun episode. Make having your notifications on so you know to join me. And I can't wait to talk to y'all in the chat. But anyway, thanks for tuning. I'll see y'all this Friday and next Tuesday on I'm out.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to